First contact and insult. The massive ship appeared without warning, materializing above New York City like a cosmic paperweight dropped by an unseen giant. Its crystalline surface refracted sunlight into rainbow patterns that danced across Manhattan's glass towers, momentarily beautiful before the panic set in. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the United Nations emergency session, her dress blues a stark contrast to the chaos erupting around her. The Security Council members were shouting over each other in a dozen languages, but her eyes remained fixed on the holographic display showing the vessel's measurements, 12 kilometers long, 3 wide, and utterly beyond anything humanity had ever constructed. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "I suggest we all take a deep breath. First contact is happening whether we're ready or not." The ship had arrived 6 hours ago. Since then, every military installation on Earth had gone to DEFCON 2, stock markets had crashed worldwide, and social media was exploding with everything from celebration to apocalyptic predictions. But still, the vessel simply hung there, silent and waiting. "We've received no communication attempts," asked the Chinese representative, his fingers drumming nervously on the polished table. "None through conventional channels," Sarah replied. "But our quantum entanglement detection arrays are picking up massive internal activity. They're watching us, analyzing our responses." The British representative adjusted his tie. "So they're studying us like lab rats before making their move?" "More likely ensuring we don't do anything rash," Sarah countered. "Remember, they chose to appear over the UN. That suggests they understand our political structures and want diplomatic contact." As if on cue, every screen in the chamber flickered to life. The image that appeared caused several gasps, a humanoid figure with iridescent scaled skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth moved, and perfect English emerged from the UN speaker system. "Greetings, primitive species designation 147B, or as you call yourselves, humans. I am High Commander Zextal of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world has been selected for evaluation and potential integration into our empire." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. The alien's tone carried the same condescension she'd heard from countless colonial powers throughout human history. Some things, it seemed, were universal. "We extend peaceful greetings," the Secretary-General began, but Zextal raised a hand, cutting him off. "Peace is earned, not given. Our scans indicate your species has barely mastered nuclear fission. You wage wars over primitive resources and invisible borders. Your atmosphere is choked with carbon emissions, and your oceans are filled with synthetic waste. In short, you are children playing with matches in a house of wood." The chamber erupted in protests, but Zextal continued, unperturbed. "However, our empire believes in potential. We offer you a choice: submit to immediate colonial administration, or prove yourselves worthy of provisional membership through trial by combat." Sarah stepped forward. "What kind of trial?" All 4 of Zextal's eyes seemed to focus on her. "Your species will select its finest warriors to face our champions in controlled combat scenarios. Victory earns you independence and trading rights. Defeat means immediate submission. And if we refuse both options?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then you will be classified as a coward species, suitable only for resource extraction and labor camps. We have encountered your kind before, primitives who bark loudly but cower when truly challenged. You have 48 Earth hours to decide. Choose wisely." The transmission cut off, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Sarah's mind was already racing, analyzing possibilities. The aliens had made a crucial mistake, one that every foreign power throughout history had made when dealing with humanity. They had underestimated human adaptability, creativity, and most importantly, humanity's capacity for righteous anger when backed into a corner. "Admiral Chen," the Secretary-General said quietly. "You have experience with special operations. What are our options?" Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Sir, I suggest we accept their trial by combat. But first, I need to make a call to a very specific facility in Virginia. There's a group of individuals who specialize in making bullies regret their decisions. You mean? Yes, sir. It's time to introduce the galactic hegemony to why Earth's apex predators have survived everything this planet has thrown at us. And why the word American is about to become the galaxy's new boogeyman. As Sarah left the chamber to make her call, she could almost feel sorry for the hegemony. Almost. They had called humanity cowards while offering a chance to fight. They were about to learn why that particular combination was the equivalent of throwing matches into a powder keg. In a secure facility deep beneath the Virginia countryside, a phone began to ring. Operation Phantom Protocol was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The following days would see the assembly of the most elite fighting force in human history. Not just soldiers, but warriors who had mastered the art of asymmetric warfare, psychological combat, and the kind of innovative thinking that had kept humanity at the top of Earth's food chain for millennia. Sarah's first stop was a seemingly abandoned warehouse in Northern Virginia. The retinal and palm scanners hidden behind a rusted panel revealed its true nature, the headquarters of the Ghost Division, a black ops unit so classified that most of the Pentagon didn't know it existed. Colonel Jack Wraith Morrison met her in a spartanly furnished office underground. His weathered face showed no reaction to the news of alien contact, but his eyes gleamed with predatory interest as Sarah explained the situation. "So they want to fight," he said, examining the holographic recordings of Zextal's message. "And they think we're primitive because we haven't mastered faster-than-light travel?" "That's the gist," Sarah replied. "Their technological superiority has led them to the oldest mistake in the book, conflating advanced technology with advanced tactical thinking." Jack nodded slowly. "They've never faced humans before, have they? Never dealt with a species that turned adaptation into an art form, that transformed warfare into a psychological science." "Exactly. And that's why I'm here. We need your best. Not just fighters, but innovators. People who can turn the hegemony's assumptions against them." Jack pressed a button on his desk, and a holographic display filled the room with personnel files. "I've got just the team in mind. Meet the Phantoms." The files flickered past: Maya, Ghost, Rodriguez, a master of electronic warfare who could hack systems she'd never seen before. David, Cypher, Chen, a psychological operations specialist who had rewritten the book on mental warfare. Sarah, Shadow, Williams, whose background in xenobiology and combat medicine made her uniquely suited for fighting unknown species. And then there was Marcus, Spectre, Washington, a former Delta Force operator who had transformed himself into something beyond a mere soldier. His file contained more redacted sections than readable ones, but his record spoke for itself: 0 failed missions, 0 casualties on his teams, and a reputation that made other Special Forces operators speak in whispers. "They're perfect," Sarah said. "But we'll need more than just 4 operators, no matter how skilled." Jack smiled. "These are just the team leaders. Each one commands a squad of similarly gifted individuals. 20 of the most lethal and innovative warriors humanity has ever produced. Can they be ready in time?" "Admiral, they've been ready their whole lives. The question isn't whether they can fight. It's whether the hegemony is ready for what's coming." As if to punctuate his words, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Jack checked his tablet and grimaced. Multiple ships just appeared in orbit. "Looks like our friends up there are getting impatient." Sarah felt a surge of grim satisfaction. The hegemony thought they were pushing humanity into a corner. Instead, they were about to learn why Earth's history was written in the victories of the underdog, why humanity's greatest achievements often came in its darkest hours. "Begin Operation Phantom Protocol," she ordered. "It's time to show the galaxy why you don't challenge humans to a fight while calling them cowards in the same breath." As she left the facility, Sarah couldn't help but smile at the thought of what was coming. The hegemony had arrived expecting to find primitive savages or cowering weaklings. Instead, they were about to encounter something far more dangerous, humans with something to prove, armed with both righteous anger and the creative genius that had kept their species alive through ice ages, plagues, and their own destructive tendencies. The game was about to begin, and humanity was playing for keeps, the Phantom Protocol. The underground training facility hummed with barely contained energy as Marcus Spectre Washington addressed his assembled team. The chamber, designed to simulate various gravitational conditions, had been modified to match what their sensors indicated about the hegemony's ships. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had made him legendary among special operators, "we're about to undertake the most important mission in human history. Not just for ourselves, but for every human being who will ever live." The assembled warriors, 20 of Earth's finest, stood at attention. Each had been chosen not just for their combat skills, but for their ability to think creatively under pressure. They represented a cross-section of Earth's military elite, Navy SEALs, Spetsnaz, SAS, GIGN, and more. Maya Ghost Rodriguez stepped forward, her holographic display showing the latest analysis of hegemony technology. Their advantages are obvious: advanced weaponry, energy shields, and centuries of interstellar combat experience. But they have weaknesses they don't even realize. She gestured, and the display shifted to show internal scans of their ships. They rely heavily on quantum computing networks. Advanced? Yes. But also vulnerable to something they've never encountered: human chaos theory applied to cyber warfare. David Cypher Chen picked up the briefing. Psychologically, they're overconfident. Their entire empire is built on technological superiority. They've never faced a species that specialized in turning disadvantages into advantages, in winning fights they supposedly couldn't win. Sarah Shadow Williams added her medical expertise. Their biology is fascinating. 4 eyes give them superior depth perception, but also twice as many vulnerable points. Their scaled skin is tough but has nerve clusters we can target. Most importantly, they've evolved in high-gravity environments, making them stronger but less agile than humans. Marcus nodded, then revealed their ace in the hole. "Thanks to Admiral Chen's negotiations, we've secured something unprecedented: the right to choose our battle environments." The hegemony, in their arrogance, agreed. They think it's meaningless given their technological advantages. The room filled with predatory grins. The hegemony had just made their first critical mistake. "Our first battle," Marcus continued, "will take place in what they consider primitive conditions, a jungle environment with high humidity and limited visibility. They chose this thinking it would disadvantage our primitive technology." Maya laughed. "They have no idea that we've been fighting and winning in those conditions for centuries. Their advanced sensors will be compromised by the moisture, while our traditional skills will shine." "Exactly," Marcus confirmed. "But that's just the beginning. Each team has been assigned specific roles based on our enemy's weaknesses. Ghost Team, you'll be running electronic warfare, using our quantum chaos algorithms to turn their networks against them." Maya's team, 5 of the world's best hackers turned warriors, nodded grimly. They had spent weeks developing viruses that operated on principles the hegemony had never encountered. Cypher Team, you'll be handling psychological operations. The hegemony has never experienced human-style psychological warfare. Use it. David's squad had already begun crafting messages that would play on the aliens' cultural assumptions and fears. The hegemony was about to learn why human psychological warfare was feared even among humans. Shadow Team, you're our medical and biological warfare specialists. Non-lethal agents only, we're proving a point, not starting a genocide. Sarah's team had developed compounds that would specifically target the aliens' unique biology, creating confusion and disorientation without causing permanent harm. My team will be the tip of the spear, Marcus finished. We'll be demonstrating why humanity's martial arts and combat techniques, developed over thousands of years of fighting other humans, are more sophisticated than they can imagine. The briefing continued with specific tactical details, but the overall strategy was clear: they would turn the hegemony's assumptions against them, using the very primitiveness they despised as a weapon. Admiral Chen arrived as they were finishing. The first battle is scheduled for tomorrow at dawn. The hegemony has agreed to broadcast it across their empire. They think it will demonstrate our inferiority. We're going to make sure it demonstrates something very different. The next 12 hours were spent in final preparations. Maya's team made last-minute adjustments to their quantum chaos algorithms. David's squad refined their psychological warfare packages. Sarah's group completed their non-lethal biological agents, while Marcus's team practiced combat scenarios in varying gravitational conditions. As the teams prepared, Admiral Chen received another transmission from the hegemony. High Commander Zexdal's voice dripped with condescension as he outlined the rules of engagement. We will permit your warriors to use any weapons they can carry, primitive though they may be. Our champions will restrict themselves to basic energy weapons, to give you a sporting chance. The combat zone will be monitored for compliance with galactic combat conventions. Sarah Chen's reply was carefully neutral. We appreciate your consideration. Will you be commanding your forces personally? I will observe from our command ship. It should be educational for all involved. After the transmission ended, Sarah turned to Marcus. They're broadcasting this across their empire, expecting to humiliate us. Instead, we're going to give them the greatest shock since they achieved space flight. Marcus nodded. They don't understand what they've done. They've given us everything we need: the right to choose our environment, the ability to use our own weapons, and most importantly, an audience for what's about to happen. The final hours before dawn were spent in careful preparation. Each team member checked and rechecked their equipment. The weapons they carried might seem primitive to the hegemony, but each had been carefully chosen and modified for maximum psychological impact. Maya's team carried what appeared to be simple tablets and communication devices, in reality, quantum-enhanced computers capable of infiltrating and corrupting alien networks. David's squad had sophisticated sound and light projection systems designed to create confusion and fear. Sarah's group carried aerosol dispersal units disguised as standard military gear. Marcus's team, however, carried what would appear to the hegemony to be almost Stone Age weapons: combat knives, reinforced batons, and other close combat weapons. The aliens would assume this meant they were primitive. They would be fatally wrong. As dawn approached, the teams gathered in the transport area. The hegemony had agreed to teleport them directly to the combat zone, another show of technological superiority that would soon backfire. Admiral Chen addressed them one final time. Remember, you're not just fighting for victory. You're fighting to send a message. Show them why humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology, it's our ability to adapt, to innovate, and to turn any situation to our advantage. The teams stood ready as the teleportation countdown began. In orbit, High Commander Zextal and his staff prepared to witness what they thought would be a quick demonstration of human inferiority. They were about to learn why throughout Earth's history, the most dangerous human was never the one with the most advanced weapons, it was the one with something to prove, a plan to follow, and the creative genius to turn disadvantage into victory. The Phantom Protocol was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The first battle. The jungle materialized around them in a shimmer of quantum particles. Steam rose from the dense canopy as the first rays of dawn filtered through leaves the size of car doors. Marcus, Spectre, Washington immediately noticed what the hegemony hadn't: the humidity was perfect for disrupting their energy weapon signatures. Ghost Team, begin electronic surveillance, he whispered into his comm unit. Shadow Team, deploy environmental sensors. Cipher Team, initiate psychological operations. My team, defensive positions. Maya's fingers danced across her quantum-enhanced tablet, the device already mapping the hegemony's communication networks. They're using standard quantum encryption. Initiating chaos protocols, now. Above them, in the hegemony command ship, High Commander Zextal watched with four-eyed amusement as his champions materialized at their designated starting positions. Each wore powered combat armor that could withstand direct hits from primitive projectile weapons. Their energy rifles could vaporize tanks. The outcome, to him, was inevitable. "Begin recording," he ordered. "Let the galaxy witness how we deal with primitive species who dare to challenge their betters." The first sign that something was wrong came when his champion's helmet displays began showing conflicting readings. Environmental sensors fluctuated wildly, showing impossible temperature and pressure variations. "Minor technical difficulties," his technical officer assured him. "The primitive environment must be interfering with our systems." On the ground, Maya smiled as her quantum chaos algorithms did their work. The viruses she designed didn't try to defeat the hegemony's advanced encryption, they simply introduced subtle errors that would compound over time, creating confusion and doubt. David's team had already begun their part. Hidden speakers throughout the jungle began emitting infrasound frequencies specifically calibrated to the hegemony's auditory range. Not enough to incapacitate, but enough to create anxiety and uncertainty. The hegemony champions advanced in textbook formation, energy rifles sweeping the jungle. Their training was excellent, their technology superior, but they had never fought an enemy who turned the very environment into a weapon. Sarah's team had seeded the area with their specially designed compounds. As the hegemony forces moved through the thick vegetation, they unknowingly absorbed microscopic particles through their armor's cooling systems. The effects would be subtle at first, slightly delayed reactions, minimal disorientation, but they would build. Marcus watched through his tactical display as the pieces fell into place. The hegemony forces were executing perfectly planned maneuvers, but those maneuvers were designed for open combat with technologically equal opponents. In this environment, against this enemy, they might as well have been marching in parade formation. "All teams," he whispered, "execute Operation Phantom." The jungle erupted in controlled chaos. Maya's algorithms reached critical mass, causing the hegemony's targeting systems to show threats in every direction. David's psychological warfare suite kicked into high gear, projecting holographic movements and shadow figures that played on the aliens' instinctive fears. The hegemony champions, their confidence shaken but training holding, fired their energy weapons. The beams dissipated in the thick humidity, creating spectacular light shows but doing little damage. Their frustration was visible even through their armor as they switched to close combat modes. That was exactly what Marcus had been waiting for. Now, he commanded, and his team moved. Years of training in Earth's most punishing environments paid off. The human operators flowed through the jungle like ghosts, using techniques perfected by indigenous warriors over centuries. The hegemony champions, for all their advanced technology, might as well have been standing still. The first alien warrior fell to a precisely placed strike at a nerve cluster that Sarah's team had identified. The second went down when Marcus's combat knife, made of materials that didn't register on hegemony scanners, found a weak point in the armor's joint. In orbit, Zextal watched in growing horror as his champion's vital signs went dark one by one. Not dead, these primitive humans were being irritatingly careful about that, but decisively incapacitated. "Impossible," he snarled. "They're using primitive weapons. Their technology is centuries behind ours." Admiral Chen's voice came through the command channel, carrying a hint of satisfaction. "Technology isn't everything, Commander. Humanity's greatest weapons have always been our minds, our ability to adapt, and our talent for turning weakness into strength." The battle ended in less than 15 minutes. All 12 hegemony champions lay unconscious or immobilized, defeated by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive and inferior. Not a single human operator had been seriously injured. Marcus stood over the fallen aliens, keying his comm unit. "Ground teams report victory." All opponents neutralized with non-lethal force. Minimal environmental damage. Zero casualties on either side. The silence from the hegemony command ship was deafening. Across their empire, billions of beings watched in shock as the primitive humans systematically dismantled warriors equipped with technology centuries ahead of their own. Admiral Chen's voice carried clear authority as she addressed not just Zextal, but the entire watching galaxy. Consider this a demonstration of why you don't judge a species solely by their technology level. Humanity didn't become Earth's dominant species through superior strength or advanced weapons. We did it by outthinking, outmaneuvering, and outplanning our opponents. She paused for effect. This was just the first battle, Commander. Would you like to reconsider your assessment of human capabilities? Zextal's response was a grudging acknowledgement that the humans had won this round, but his tone carried a warning. Impressive tactics, Admiral. But you've only proven you can fight in primitive conditions. The next battle will be very different. As the human teams were teleported back to their base, Marcus caught Maya grinning. They still don't get it, do they? She said. They think this was our best shot, using an environment we know against their technology. Marcus shook his head. They're about to learn that humans are most dangerous not in familiar territory, but when we're forced to innovate. The next battle will be in their environment, with their rules. And that, Admiral Chen said, joining them, is exactly what we've been counting on. They think they've seen humanity at our most primitive. They're about to discover what happens when we decide to get creative. The first battle was over, but the real war, the one that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy, was just beginning. And humanity had no intention of playing by the hegemony's rules anymore. Escalation. The hegemony's response to their defeat came swiftly and predictably. High Commander Zextal announced that the next battle would take place in an environment of their choosing, a massive space station at the edge of Earth's solar system. The message was clear: no more primitive jungles, no more playing in humanity's comfort zone. Admiral Chen gathered her team in the Pentagon's secure briefing room, now equipped with holographic projectors showing the battle station's schematics. The structure was a masterpiece of alien engineering, a sprawling complex of zero-gravity chambers, energy fields, and technology beyond human understanding. They think they're forcing us to fight at a disadvantage, Maya said, studying the station's computer systems. But they've just given us an even bigger opportunity. Marcus nodded, his eyes tracking potential entry points and defensive positions. They've forgotten the most important lesson from Earth's military history: the more complex the system, the more vulnerabilities it has. The next 48 hours were a frenzy of preparation and innovation. While the hegemony expected the humans to struggle with adapting to space warfare, humanity's finest minds were already finding ways to turn the station's advanced technology against itself. Sarah's team had been working with NASA scientists to develop new compounds that would work in zero gravity. The station's air recycling system is actually perfect for our purposes, she explained. Their filters are designed to stop known biological and chemical agents. But they've never encountered our particular blend of Earth-based compounds, David finished, grinning. And their psychological profiles suggest they're particularly vulnerable to disorientation in zero gravity. Maya's team had made an even more significant breakthrough. Their quantum networks are incredibly sophisticated, she reported. But that sophistication makes them vulnerable to something they've never encountered: human chaos mathematics combined with good old-fashioned computer viruses. Marcus spent hours in zero-gravity simulators with his team, adapting Earth's martial arts for space combat. The hegemony would expect clumsy humans flailing in zero-G. They would get something very different. Admiral Chen watched the preparations with growing confidence. They think forcing us into space will neutralize our advantages. Instead, they're about to learn why humans are most dangerous when forced to adapt to new conditions. The day of the battle arrived with typical hegemony pageantry. Their media broadcasts showed gleaming champions in next-generation combat suits, armed with weapons that could reduce planets to ash. The commentary was filled with dismissive remarks about humanity's primitive space capability. The human team materialized in their designated starting zone, wearing what appeared to be simplified versions of standard spacesuits. The hegemony observers nearly laughed, until they noticed something odd about how the humans moved in zero gravity. "Begin combat operations," Marcus commanded, and Operation Phantom entered its second phase. Maya's quantum chaos algorithms hit first, spreading through the station's networks like digital wildfire. Gravity controls fluctuated wildly in select sections. Emergency alerts blared randomly. Defense systems targeted phantom threats. The hegemony champions responded with practiced precision, their training kicking in as they moved to secure critical systems. But that training had never accounted for an enemy that understood chaos theory at a fundamental level. David's team launched their psychological warfare package, now enhanced for space operations. Holographic projections, calibrated to exploit the hegemony's four-eyed vision, created impossible spatial distortions. The aliens' superior visual capabilities became a weakness as their brains struggled to process the conflicting information. Sarah's team had seeded their compounds throughout the station's air supply, using the recycling systems to ensure maximum dispersal. The effects were subtle but devastating: slight delays in reaction time, minor spatial disorientation, just enough to throw off the precise timing needed for space combat. But it was Marcus's team that delivered the real shock. The humans moved through zero gravity with impossible grace, using techniques developed by studying Earth's sea creatures and adapting them for space. Their seemingly primitive suits contained innovations that the hegemony's scans couldn't detect: microscopic thrust vectoring, neural response systems, and combat aids based on decades of space research. The battle in space proved even more one-sided than the jungle fight. The human operators used the station's architecture against the defenders, turning every corridor into an ambush point, every maintenance shaft into a tactical advantage. The hegemony's superior weapons proved nearly useless against an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. In his command center, Zextal watched in growing rage as his champions were systematically neutralized. "This is impossible. They barely have a space program. Their technology is centuries behind ours." "Technology isn't everything," Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our tools, it's our ability to understand and exploit the principles behind them. Your station may be advanced, but physics is physics, and we've been studying that longer than you might think." The battle ended with all hegemony defenders incapacitated and the station under human control. Maya's team had completely locked down its systems, while David's psychological warfare had the defenders questioning their own senses. Sarah's compounds ensured any resistance was uncoordinated and ineffective. Marcus stood in the station's control center, surrounded by disabled alien technology and unconscious defenders. "Second objective secured," he reported. "Zero casualties, minimal damage to station infrastructure. Though I think we've thoroughly demonstrated why underestimating primitive species is a bad idea." The implications of this second victory rippled through the hegemony like a shockwave. The humans hadn't just won, they had turned the aliens' own technology against them, proving that understanding principles was more important than having advanced tools. Admiral Chen addressed the watching galaxy again. "This station represents the peak of your technology. We just showed you how vulnerable that technology is to an enemy who thinks differently. Would you like to proceed with the third battle, or should we discuss terms for a more equitable relationship?" The silence from the hegemony command ship was answer enough. They had just learned the hardest lesson any advanced civilization could face: that technology alone doesn't determine the outcome of conflicts. Innovation, adaptation, and the willingness to think differently were far more powerful weapons. As the human teams prepared for extraction, Maya turned to Marcus. "They're still not going to give up, are they? Their whole empire is built on technological superiority. They can't admit that a primitive species could be their equal." Marcus checked the readings from the station's systems, now firmly under human control. No, they won't give up. But that's exactly what we've been counting on. The next battle will be their last chance to prove their superiority. And? Admiral Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. And we're going to use it to change the galaxy forever. They wanted to show everyone why humanity shouldn't be taken seriously. Instead, they're about to help us demonstrate why we're ready for a seat at the galactic table, on our terms. The second battle was over, but the true victory was yet to come. The hegemony had finally begun to realize what they had awakened on that small, blue planet they had so casually dismissed. The galaxy was about to learn why challenging humanity's courage was the last mistake any empire should make, the final battle. High Commander Zextal stood before the Hegemony High Council, his scaled skin flushed dark with humiliation. The massive chamber, with its crystalline architecture and quantum field displays, had never felt more oppressive. Representatives from 1,000 worlds watched as he tried to explain how a primitive species had systematically dismantled the Empire's finest warriors. These humans, he said, mandibles clicking in agitation, are unlike any species we've encountered. They don't fight like civilized beings. They turn our own technology against us. They've beaten you twice, Supreme Counselor Vermax interrupted, all four eyes narrowing. And in doing so, they've made the hegemony look weak before the entire galaxy. The implications were clear. The hegemony's power relied on the perception of overwhelming technological superiority. If a primitive species could defeat them, their entire empire might begin to fracture. I propose one final battle, Zextal said. But this time, we change the rules. No more controlled environments. No more limited engagement. We face them with our full might, in open combat, before the galaxy. The council chamber erupted in debate. Such a departure from traditional combat protocols was unprecedented, but so was losing to a pre-FTL species. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the hegemony's challenge with a grim smile. The massive hologram of Zextal loomed over the UN Security Council chamber as he outlined the terms. Open combat between our forces. No environmental restrictions. No limitations on technology or weapons, save those prohibited by galactic law. The winner takes all, Earth's freedom or complete submission to hegemony rule. Marcus and his team, standing at attention along the chamber's walls, exchanged knowing looks. This was exactly what they had been waiting for. We accept, Admiral Chen replied, her voice carrying no hint of the satisfaction she felt. Name the time and place. The battlefield would be Mars' largest moon, Phobos. Its low gravity and irregular surface would provide challenges for both sides. More importantly, its proximity to Earth would allow humanity to showcase their response to the hegemony's challenge before their home planet. The preparation that followed made their previous efforts look like warm-ups. Every nation on Earth contributed their best technology and brightest minds. Maya's team worked with quantum physicists from 12 countries to perfect their chaos algorithms. David's psychological warfare experts collaborated with artists and psychologists to create effects that would work on a massive scale. Sarah's team had their biggest breakthrough yet. We've figured out how their neural interfaces work, she reported during the final briefing. Their entire command and control structure depends on quantum entanglement. It's sophisticated, but it has a fundamental weakness: it can't handle true randomness. Marcus nodded, studying the new equipment his team would be using. And humans are nothing if not random. How long before their systems start to break down? Minutes, maybe less. But they'll adapt quickly. We'll need to press our advantage while we have it. The day of the final battle dawned over Mars, its red surface casting an otherworldly glow over Phobos. The hegemony arrived in force, not just champions this time, but warships, battle platforms, and enough firepower to level a continent. They expected to find the humans cowering behind improvised defenses. Instead, they found something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that had taken their previous defeats and turned them into weapons. The human forces appeared minimal at first, just the 20 operators who had fought in the previous battles, seemingly exposed on Phobos's cratered surface. The hegemony commanders smiled, thinking the humans had finally overplayed their hand. Then Operation Phantom went into full effect. Maya's quantum chaos algorithms, now evolved far beyond their original form, didn't just disrupt the hegemony's networks, they invaded them. Every system they touched began spawning copies of itself, creating a cascade of conflicting commands that spread through their fleet like a digital plague. David's team unleashed what they called the ultimate mindfuck, a combination of psychological warfare techniques that played on every fear and uncertainty in the hegemony's collective psyche. Their four-eyed vision betrayed them as the very vacuum of space seemed to twist and distort. Sarah's compounds, released in microscopic quantities, had been tailored to interact with the hegemony's neural interfaces. The effects were devastating. Command structures broke down as officers found themselves unable to trust their own enhanced senses. But it was Marcus's team that delivered the killing blow. They had studied every second of footage from the previous battles, analyzing how the hegemony responded to different threats. Now they moved across Phobos's surface like wraiths, appearing where least expected, striking at vulnerabilities the aliens didn't even know they had. In orbit, Zextal watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to tear itself apart. Ships fired on phantom targets or fled from non-existent threats. Ground forces collapsed into chaos as their sophisticated combat systems turned against them. "Stop," he finally commanded, his voice carrying across all frequencies. "In the name of the hegemony, I order you to stop." The humans did stop, but not out of obedience. They had achieved their objective. The galaxy watched as humanity demonstrated not just their combat prowess, but their fundamental understanding of how to turn an enemy's strength into a weakness. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the silence that followed. The hegemony built its empire on technological superiority. We've just shown you why that's a dangerous foundation. Technology can be corrupted, turned against itself. True strength comes from adaptation, innovation, and the courage to face challenges on your own terms. She paused, letting her words sink in. We don't want to be your enemies. We don't even want to be your subjects. What we want is recognition, not just of our right to exist independently, but of the fact that different species might have different paths to advancement. The Supreme Council, watching via quantum feed, saw the truth they had been avoiding. This primitive species had done more than just defeat their champions, they had exposed the fundamental flaw in the hegemony's philosophy. Zextal, his career and reputation in ruins, could only watch as the council began emergency deliberations. The outcome was inevitable, the hegemony would have to change, or it would collapse under the weight of its own assumptions. As the human teams prepared to return to Earth, Marcus found Admiral Chen staring at the red surface of Mars below. "Think they've learned their lesson?" he asked. She smiled. "About underestimating humanity?" "Probably. About the bigger picture?" "That's going to take time. But we've given them something to think about, and given other species hope that there's more than one way to advance." Maya joined them, her tablets showing the cascade of changes already rippling through the hegemony's networks. "They're calling it the human revolution. Apparently, we've inspired quite a few worlds to start questioning the old order." "Good," Admiral Chen said. "Because that was our real victory here, not defeating their champions or overcoming their technology, but showing the galaxy that courage and innovation can overcome any obstacle." As Earth came into view, blue and beautiful against the black of space, the team reflected on what they had accomplished. They had done more than save their planet, they had changed the course of galactic history. The hegemony would adapt or fall. Other species would rise, following humanity's example of innovation and determination. And the galaxy would never again mistake technological advancement for true civilization. The American Boogeyman had struck, and the universe would never be the same. In the years that followed, Earth would take its place among the stars not as a subject world or a primitive curiosity, but as a symbol of what was possible when determination met innovation. The Phantom Protocol became legendary, studied by species across the galaxy as an example of how to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. And if any empire ever again thought to dismiss humanity as primitive or cowardly, they needed only look to the stars above Mars, where the debris of the mighty hegemony fleet still orbited, a permanent reminder of what happens when you underestimate the human spirit. The galaxy had learned its lesson: never call humans cowards, because you never know when the American Boogeyman might strike back.